Happy Thursday, everybody. All right. So we are diving into Augustus today and the Pax Romana of Rome. So, on Tuesday, we talked about, of course, the first triumvirate and then the assassination of Julius Caesar and then the second triumvirate. And we stopped, of course, with, Mark Antony and Cleopatra's defeat by Octavian. And, Augustus, of course, is going to become the first emperor of Rome after he defeats Antony and Cleopatra. Augustus is Octavian. Octavian is Augustus, just FYI. He changes his name to Augustus, which just simply means in Latin like serene or lofty. So, like a higher, title, a higher position. So he becomes emperor, and here's the deal with Augustus, and that's kind of what this next video that I want you guys to watch is exemplifying. You can look at historical accounts of Augustus that are, very favorable. They present him in a good light. He stabilized Rome. He, again, there's the famous, like, he found Rome a city of bricks and left it a city of marble. But the reality of it is that he was probably somewhere in the middle. He wasn't all good. He wasn't all bad. And Rome was pretty chaotic when he becomes emperor. And he does stabilize it, and he does, restore order and, and restores law and kind of gets Rome on a track of peace and prosperity for the most part for a good 200 years. So, the big question is always, well, there should never be one man with that much power. Well, I mean, come on. In all of history, you have men that are kings and emperors and tyrants and military warlords that are a one-man show. So, if you're going to apply that mentality to the historical scene, you're going to have to put countless leaders, into this fray. So again, like, it's a little bit of a modern perspective to try to say that he's a bad guy just simply because he was an emperor, because that's looking at the past through the lens of the present, and you can't do that when you're studying history. So I want you guys to, again, watch this video. It does a really great job of kind of showcasing the good and the bad of Augustus, and kind of at the end letting you decide, and also just leaving it to, there's really kind of no right or wrong answer to that question. So a lot of students get kind of confused when we switch from republic to empire, because they're like, so then why is the Senate still around? Well, the Senate pretty much turns into, instead of the governing body of the state, it turns into a kind of council for the emperor. And here's the deal. It's still a massive empire with tons of people and a complex system as to, how it needs to be governed, how it needs to be handled. And one man can't do all of that. And so you still have again, system of delegated power from the emperor to others, including the Senate, the consuls, the praetors, the tribunes, the prefects. There are still tons and tons of titles and opportunities for power by other people. It's just the buck stops with the emperor. So, again, just kind of bear that in mind. I have so many students that in their brains, it's like they get rid of everybody and the emperor is the only person controlling everything. Well, it's just not humanly possible. So just know that there's all this other stuff, all of these other titles, all of these other people that he is delegating power to throughout the empire to maintain control and to maintain, again, stability. Because, a city needs a stability, and so therefore it needs leaders, and he can't be everywhere at once. So that's kind of what this chart is hopefully showing you. So Augustus does make the emperorship hereditary. And so the four emperors that come in after him are called the Julio-Claudian emperors because they are related in some way, shape, or form to him and Julius Caesar. So the first off is Tiberius, and it's important for you to also remember that, Jesus Christ is going to be born during the reign of Augustus, and he is going to be crucified during the reign of Tiberius. Jesus Christ is said to have been crucified in 33 AD. And so, of course, as you can see there on that chart, that's during Tiberius's reign as emperor. Tiberius is mentioned in the New Testament several times. The prefect or governor of Judea, Pontius Pilate, will be the one that orders his execution. And, we're going to be talking about the spread of Christianity and all of that within the Roman Empire a lot next week. But just kind of bear in mind, again, Jesus was born under Roman control and killed by Roman authority. So, that plays a pretty big part. So, out of the Julio-Claudian emperors, the two most famous, or infamous, I should say, are Caligula and Nero. So Caligula, it's actually a nickname, but that's what he went by. Meant little boots because he followed his dad around, who was a general, into military encampments, and the guys nicknamed him Little Boots, or Caligula. He is crazy and sadistic and just an all-around horrible human being. To describe him truly would mean that this little lesson would get R-rated very quickly. So I'm going to do like the PG-13 version for you. So Caligula married his sister, and when she died, he was devastated. And he actually names his daughter with his second wife, who's not related. He names her after his dead wife / sister. He tells his wife regularly, like, if you don't do what I want you to do, I'm going to have you killed. He would have children killed in front of their parents just to, like, hear them beg for death instead of their kids. He had these party barges, these ships that he would have sailed out into the Mediterranean. So, of course, whoever was on the ship couldn't get off the ship. Because you're out in the middle of the ocean. And he would, of course, make them perform all kinds of things that are, again, inappropriate for me to talk about, but I'll let your imagination fill in the blanks. It's not good. He promoted his horse to be a state official. His horse would regularly dine at the table with him. And if anybody complained or said anything about it, he would just kill him. He also had an obsession with seashells, and it would make all of his soldiers had to bring him seashells. And if they didn't, then he would have them killed and be like, why didn't you bring me seashells? I mean, he was nuts, guys. You can't make this stuff up. Again, but he was just an all around awful human being, crazy, psychopathic, sadistic, sexual deviant, awful guy. Okay. Claudius is his uncle. He comes after him. Caligula is going to get murdered, by the way. His own bodyguard's going to take him out. He's only in control for 4 years, and of course that's 4 years too many. But anyways, he's going to get taken out. Claudius is not nearly as interesting. He's not great, but he's not terrible. But then you get Nero. Nero is horribly cruel. I know you're kind of like, oh my gosh, worse than Caligula. I mean, maybe. So Nero wasn't crazy like Caligula was, but he was just mean, down to his core. He killed his own mom. Let's get that out of the way. And then he also hated Christians. Now you have to remember again what I told you a second ago about Jesus Christ and his birth and crucifixion being under Augustus and then Tiberius. Well, by the time Nero is the emperor, Christianity is starting to spread throughout Rome. Well, I mean, guys, remember the emperor is considered, a god, and people worshipped the emperor of Rome much like they would a god, and he was considered, chosen by the gods and directly picked and connected to them. So for this, you know, peasant like Jew out in this far eastern province of Judea saying that he is the son of God, I mean, that's the reason why, of course, the Romans wanted him hunted down and killed, wanted Jesus hunted down and killed. It was saying, I don't believe that the emperor is a god. I am denying that, and I am denying worshiping him in any way, shape, or form. And I won't play that political game just to satisfy your ego. I mean, that's essentially what Jesus and his followers were saying. And so as Christianity spreads, Nero and the emperors look at it as a direct threat to their reign and their power. So Nero would actually go around rounding up Christians, use them in the Colosseum, or not the Colosseum because it wasn't built yet, but use them in like other arenas, for you would use their death as entertainment. He would oftentimes dip them in oil and have them put up on crucifixes or on stakes and have them burned alive. He would also force other Christians whilst one was burning to like dance around the stake. And it was like a very sadistic version of like musical chairs. Whoever stops celebrating the fire of your fellow Christian and the death of your fellow Christian, like whoever can't basically pretend good enough to be enjoying this, you're next. He burns down 3/4 of the city of Rome in 64 AD because he wants a new palace built. So, he killed off a bunch of Romans too when he did that, because again, like 75% of the city was pretty much gone once he does that. And so he is going to commit suicide and not have an heir. Thank the good Lord for that. And that is when you're going to end up with the Vespasian rule of emperors that transitions into the 5 good emperors. Whew. All right. So the 5 good emperors are Nerva, Trajan, Hadrian, Pius, and then Marcus Aurelius. And these guys are going to usher in the true height of Rome as an empire. Under Trajan, Rome will become its absolute largest and most prosperous. Hadrian, of course, is the most known for building Hadrian's Wall there in northern England. And these guys right here are like where it's at. Their time frame as emperors are, that time in Rome where when you think of Rome and you think of Rome at its height and at its best and at its most powerful, it's under these 5 rulers. Okay. So it's, the Pax Romana is considered to last from the time of Augustus to Marcus Aurelius, which Marcus Aurelius is going to die in about 180 AD. So again, you're looking at about a 200-year time frame where, even though, yes, we had the Julio-Claudian emperors and Nero and Caligula were awful, overall, however, Rome was stable and peaceful, aside from conquering and enslaving people and things like that. I mean, overall, like the inter sanctum of, there wasn't all of this horrible civil war and chaos and, murdering of, I mean, it was overall pretty peaceful and highly, highly prosperous. So this video that right here is from Khan Academy. It's a little drier than what I usually try to show. I always try to show you guys videos that are kind of entertaining whilst also being historical. This one is just a history teacher kind of going through this timeline that I just explained of the Pax Romana again, and giving you really good insight and information. So again, to kind of drive home what I was saying, I would definitely watch this. So, just these last 3 slides we're going to cover today are just about, hey, when Rome got really big, where were its boundary lines? Well, I mean, boundary lines then were just like they are today. It could be a river, it could be a desert, it could be an actual artificial boundary like Hadrian's Wall, which that's a picture of it today. You can still go see Hadrian's Wall in northern England. It's pretty incredible. It spans across, that whole northern portion of England, so it's pretty neat. Um, and then how did you unify this much land and this many people? Well, I mean, again, if you go back to this, I mean, it was delegated power and having a good system of management in control, or in place so that you could control. And so, you have imperial government, provincial governments, local administrators of cities and towns. You can compare it even the way that we do it today. We have our federal government that's based out of Washington, D.C., but then each state has their own governor and lieutenant governor and senators and the House, and then, our own judges. And then each city has its own mayor and city council. And I mean, there's a lot of leadership that goes into, um, managing that big of a state. So, another thing, they had a standardized law code with the 12 tables. They had urban planning. They had a standard language, Latin, and so again, they had a standardized system of managing all of these people and all of this um, land. And then it doesn't hurt that they're doing really well economically. I mean, look at the amount of stuff that they can trade once they begin to control all of that land. They're trading grain, marble, metals, olive oil, textiles, which is cloth, of course, timber, meats, wine. And then they also have, of course, unfortunately, but I mean, this is just the norm at this point in time in history, they have a pretty prosperous slave trade. They have incredible road systems. We've talked about that before. All roads lead to Rome. It's because they built them. And they were in very, very good roads so that you could get around, you could trade easily, you could communicate easily. All of this is all feeds into how and why it became so prosperous, again, during that Pax Romana period. Now, once Marcus Aurelius dies, and you enter into, about 200 AD, you're going to see the steady decline of Rome, from 200 to 476, which is when it's going to fall. You're going to just kind of see it steadily lose ground and go down. And that's what we're talking about mostly next week. Tomorrow, we're going to talk a little bit more about just culture. What was it like to live in Rome? I thought that would be kind of a cool thing to do on a Friday. We'll talk about the gladiators and what it was like, in the arena and things like that. Of course, your gladiators were mostly slaves. So, anyways, that's tomorrow, though, and I will see you guys then for all of that. Hope you are having an awesome Thursday. Bye.